Hey guys, it's Phoenix Android Radios here, and in this video we're going to be looking at the 13.6-inch radio for the G37, G35, Q40, and Q60 vehicles. This is from 2007 all the way to 2015. And this is the Android 10 model, so it has a black panel on the back of the radio. Before we move to the cables, on the radio itself, we have multiple connectors here. You're not going to be using all of them, but you will be using a majority of them. I would say these three, as well as this large one here. There's the radio antenna connection here. There's two screw-ons here. One is for the 4G LTE signal. One is for the 4G signal for a SIM card. And the other one is for the GPS antenna. And those are these two right here. So this GPS antenna screws onto here, and the SIM card antenna and the 4G antenna screws onto here. The radio has a SIM card slot here, the main power cord here, and you have two coaxial. These are for digital amplifiers aftermarket. So these usually are not needed if you're using factory connections. The canvas connector here, as well as the air conditioning here. Now, when you first remove the factory radio from the vehicle, make sure you also keep in mind to keep the air conditioning box connected. So you need to remove this box from the factory radio and keep these two connected to their original connectors. As well as this one. This one comes from the back of your AC panel. The back of your air conditioning buttons panel, there is a connector on the right side, top right corner. Make sure that one corresponds to this one here. These three connectors are kind of easy to get mixed up. There are many identical connectors that are the same as these three. So keep these connected to the factory, how they were originally with the box inside. And this one comes from that AC panel button on the top right corner. There's a plug that connects to here. The radio itself has a built-in microphone, which is on the left here. And there is a RST button that you can press with a paper clip or a pin. And just pressing it one time when the screen goes dark, you can let go and the radio will reboot. Fan speed, AC on or off, circulation, mode, and a hazard button here. One thing to check is if you have this connected and it is correct, the hazard button should work. If the hazard button does not work, that means this connection is not the correct one and need to find the correct one to get the hazard button working. Now that we've gone through the radio and having to keep the factory air conditioning box connected inside the car, still inside, we can move on to the extra cables you receive. So we've already looked at the GPS antenna, the 4G signal antenna for the SIM card, and we have this harness here that also has a secondary SIM card slot that you can push and release to insert a second SIM card. But use one or the other. This large connector connects up top here, and the connection you need to have is the clip needs to be facing downwards this way, and it should click in place. Maybe you can push down on that clip and then push in. On the harness, you have a 3.5 jack for an external microphone. If you're not okay with the built-in microphone or the built-in microphone not working, we do provide an external microphone that you can plug into here and route this microphone outside the vehicle so that it's accessible for your voice to be heard. There is a subwoofer RCA for a subwoofer signal. There is a blue wire labeled amp control. This blue wire is not needed, so this can disregard. And you have aux AV in RCA female, as well as a aux CVBS in RCA female. If you put a video source to one of these two RCAs, that video source will show up on the radio screen if you open the aux app. You also have aux R in and aux L in. This is to support the factory red and white RCAs on some vehicles that have RCA inputs. And you have RL and RR out, FL out, and FR out. The other connectors you receive are two USB cables. One is a 6-pin and the other is a 4-pin. The 4-pin is the primary USB port. The 6-pin is the secondary USB port. The 4-pin is for the 4-pin USB port is for Android Auto and Apple Carplay. This connects up to here. Again, the clip is facing downwards. And the 6-pin connector goes here. Now these two USB ports, the 4-pin is the primary, so we recommend routing this USB port outside the vehicle for access. And the secondary, we recommend the same, but primary is more useful for the Apple CarPlay and the Android Auto. Next to it, you have a 10-pin connector, and that comes from here. There is two loose wires, back power and brake. These two wires are not needed, and you have a female RCA labeled CCD AVN. This is for the factory backup camera connection. And you have two loose wires here, BT antenna and Wi-Fi antenna. These loose wires do not need to be used, but we do need this RCA for the factory backup camera. And if you plan to use an aftermarket backup camera, you would also plug in the RCA to here. So that's what comes with the radio on the extra connectors. Now we can look at the main harness. The main harness has many plugs, but they should correspond to your specified model and year, as well as if you have navigation and if you have a Bose sound system or not. The top here is the power connector, which would connect up to here. Simple as that. This connector here, we have two green wires, and you do need to plug this in. This allows for making sure that when you run the updates, that the updates go through. So this is a 8-pin connector, and that connects up here next to the 4-pin USB port. And the two RCAs that come out, RCA-RR and RCA-RL, this is for the aftermarket amplifier. Or if you have a factory amplifier, you need to plug these two RCAs in. And we can find that right here. So if we find a connector with Bose sound system, so this has a factory amplifier and it's no navigation. There is also a connector for with navigation with Bose. You also have a connector for with navigation. Vehicle, so if you have an amplifier in your vehicle like the Bose sound system, this is with Bose. There are two red and white RCAs for the front and back, FL, FR, fronts, RL and RR for right and left back. Connect the FL and FR to the FL and LFR on here. So you have FL and FR. So connect these two. This is for vehicles with Bose sound system. And no navigation based on this connector label. And the connector label, Bose sound system with no navigation. There is also RR and RL. And this connector would go to this 8-pin connector here. There is RR and RL. So connect them like so. This is for vehicles with Bose sound system and no navigation, which is this connector here. If your vehicle has navigation, you will not be using this connector, so you'll disconnect that here. So for vehicles with navigation and Bose sound system, disregard this connector because this is for non-navigation, and we can move to the connector that says with navigation. So the vehicles with navigation use this connector, and it has multiple RCAs for the front and back, and this is for that sound system. For with navigation vehicles have a Bose sound system. We can do RR and RL, FL and FR, and connect it respectively to the RR, which is here, and the RL, as well as the FR and FL on the top large connector. So this is with navigation with Bose sound system, and this is the with Bose sound system but no navigation. These are the sounds for that Bose, and this is the sound for the with navigation Bose. We can disconnect these four, and now that we can put these two connectors aside, we can look at the other connections. You're always going to be needing this connector, which is the antenna radio connector. Connect this to the factory car connection and this to the top up here. The other connectors we have the other connectors are without navigation. If you do not have a navigation system on your factory radio, use this connector. If you have a navigation system with your vehicle, can disregard this one and move to this connector with navigation. The next two connectors are for the factory backup camera. The factory backup camera, without navigation, use this connector. With navigation, use this connector. For both of these connectors, one of them, the without navigation vehicle, it is actually the same connector as the top up here. So make sure that, again, confirm your hazard button is working. That way you know that this connector is the right one. If your hazard is not working, you may have switched out the camera connector with the hazard connector, so swap the two. The without navigation vehicles, the factory backup camera, there is an RCA male labeled CVBS, cam CVBS, it's a male connector, and that connects to the top here that is labeled CCDVIN. And the second RCA on the same connector without navigation is labeled AUX-V, and this RCA male corresponds to the female RCA on your factory vehicle. Some vehicles have a red, white, and yellow for video inputs, and that's what this corresponds to, the yellow on that set of red, white, and yellow. For vehicles with navigation, the factory backup camera will be using this connector, and on this connector you have about the same thing, one male RCA labeled camera, cam CVBS 07 to 09. With navigation, you would be using this RCA based on the label. Or if you have a 2010 to 15 with navigation, you would be using this RCA. And then the last one is for the yellow, red, and white factory RCAs on your vehicle to support that yellow female RCA on your car. And so if you have a 2007 to 9 with navigation, use this male RCA. If you have a 2010 to 15 with navigation, use this RCA instead. So you will leave one empty for the with navigation vehicles, and then the last male RCA is to support the factory female RCA yellow on your vehicle. Could be in the armrest compartment. And that connection will connect to AUX-V on the large connector here. You have this connector here for the CAN bus communication on the radio that connects here. The clip will be on the top. Maybe you can press on the clip to open it up and connect it here. And on this connection, you have many blue and green wires, but just follow the labels to determine which one is needed. So you have 4 connectors. Based on this, you have 2007 to 9 with navigation, 10 to 15 if you have a Bose and with navigation, and then you have without navigation, as well as a 10 to 15 with navigation. So these two, if you're a 10 to 15, 2010 to 15 with navigation, you most likely have Bose, so you're going to be using both of these connectors. And the other 2 connectors, you have 2007 to 9 with navigation, use this one if you're 2007 to 2009. And if you have no navigation, you would be using this connector. And on this connector, there are 2 RCAs, aux-R and aux-L. This is to support the red and white RCA on your factory car. That will also correspond to the aux-V. So this will support the yellow, red, and white RCAs on your factory vehicle. aux-R and aux-L will connect to this large connector that has 2 red and white RCAs labeled aux-L and aux-R, if we can find that. aux-L in and aux-R in. So we connect those right here. So connections here are pretty straightforward. The main thing to check is if your labels are being used correctly. The last connection we forgot to mention was the airbag connector, and this is a 4-pin connector. You should be able to find this in your car, just need to connect it there, and that should remove the airbag sensor popping up. If the airbag light still pops up, we recommend using an OBD reader or scanner to try to clear the codes.